opinion on Israel or Palestine, and I've referenced them all. Let me know what you think.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway.
And equally immaterial in my mind is the argument that America cannot oust Saddam without prior approval of the international community.
The UN is failing, and you, Mr. Secretary General, have lost all morality and impartiality. I think that the Secretary General must resign.
Not lying. Nobody really knows why we went into Iraq.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. Nations, democracies, don't go to war easily, and they usually debate and argue before they do. Sometimes they have to be bombed into going to war.
As a typical American, before 9/11, I was like, you know what, just set it out. You could all just fall into the middle of the sea, and it doesn't matter to me, because you're always fighting. Now 9/11 happened, I thought, gee, maybe I should pay attention to this.
Had I been given the opportunity to speak before September 11th, I believe I would have offered pretty much the same suggestions about how the war on terrorism should be fought and how it can be won. Even had I presented my views in the most coherent and persuasive fashion, I have no doubt that some of you, and perhaps most of you, would have regarded them as exaggerated and even alarmist.
So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center. Other nut ideologies don't do that.
You look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So,
Where were you on September 11th?
I was home. And the only reason I wasn't where I was every morning, subsequent to the 26th day of July, my mornings were spent usually at a breakfast meeting at Windows at 8, and so my mornings were spent at the Trade Center, and then by noon I was back uptown, and so that particular morning, because I have light-colored hair and fair skin, and I'm an annuity to the dermatologist, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me at the doctor. And I remember dressing to go to the doctor and finally saying to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I've got so much to do downtown. I got to cancel this. I've got to go downtown. And she said, you're not going to cancel this appointment. You're going to the dermatologist. And
the Iraqis did not knock down. It was not Saddam Hussein that knocked down the World Trade Center. Okay.
That a clear connection between Saddam and September 11th must be established before we have a right to prevent the next September 11th. Well, I think not. Because Saddam's nuclear program has fundamentally changed in those 2 decades. He no longer needs one large reactor to produce the deadly material necessary for atomic bombs. He can produce it in centrifuges the size of washing machines that can be hidden throughout the country. And I want to remind you that Iraq is a very big country.
Going into Iraq may have been the worst decision any president has made in the history of this country. That's how bad it is, okay? Spend $2 trillion in Iraq and fighting Iraq. $2 trillion. 2 trillion. Thousands of lives, right? We got nothing.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
We have nothing. We're not even there. We can't even make a phone call right now.
The 2 nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. Brought a diagram for you. Here's a diagram. By next spring, at most by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage.
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made. It might be a bigger and better deal than people in this room even understand. That's a possibility. So let's see what we do.
Let's try it.
Doesn't sound too optimistic, but that's... And after meeting with Bibi for 3 minutes, I looked at him and said, "You don't want to make a deal, do you?" And he said, "Well, and the fact is, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make a deal."
Why?
I thought the Palestinians were impossible. The Israelis would do anything to make peace and a deal. I found that not to be true.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as.
We must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Mr. President, are the Israelis operating within the rules of war that you talked about last week being so important?
Good talking to you.
But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising.
He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
Well, I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beating children.
George and me laughing together, and so